Champagne whispers. Olivia Parker stood before the full-length mirror in the bridal suite, barely recognizing the woman staring back at her. The ivory gown hugged her figure perfectly, cascading to the floor in elegant waves of satin and lace. Her chestnut hair was adorned with tiny pearl pins that caught the light as she moved. 6 months of planning had led to this moment. Her wedding day with Nathan Reed, the architectural engineer who had stolen her heart 3 years ago at a charity gala. "You look absolutely breathtaking," gushed Diane, Olivia's mother, dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. "Nathan won't know what hit him." Olivia smiled, but something felt off. The morning had begun with a text from Nathan that seemed rushed, almost detached. "Just finishing up. Can't wait to see you. Love you." The words were right, but the warmth she'd grown accustomed to was missing. She dismissed it as pre-wedding jitters and focused on the final touches of her appearance. The ceremony at St. Augustine's Chapel was everything Olivia had dreamed of. Sunlight streamed through stained glass, casting rainbow patterns across the aisle as she walked toward Nathan. His eyes widened when he saw her, and for a moment all her doubts disappeared. The exchange of vows was perfect, their voices steady and sure as they promised forever to each other before 200 guests. It wasn't until the reception at Willow Creek Estate that Olivia noticed something was wrong. Nathan, usually so attentive, seemed distracted. His gaze kept drifting across the room, and his hand, which normally found hers instinctively, remained distant. Following his line of sight, Olivia spotted Vanessa Mitchell, her college roommate and bridesmaid, laughing near the champagne fountain. Vanessa was stunning in her burgundy bridesmaid dress, her blonde hair falling in loose curls around her shoulders. She had always been the vivacious one in their friend group, the one who drew attention effortlessly. But never Nathan's, not until today. "Is everything okay?" Olivia whispered to Nathan during their first dance, noticing how his eyes kept scanning the room. "Perfect," he assured her with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Just taking it all in." As the evening progressed, Olivia found herself watching from a distance as Nathan approached Vanessa at the bar. Their conversation seemed animated, with Vanessa touching his arm and leaning in close to speak over the music. Nathan's face lit up in a way it hadn't all day, not even when Olivia had walked down the aisle. "Your husband and Vanessa seem to be having quite the chat," remarked Olivia's cousin Jade, appearing beside her with 2 glasses of champagne. "Old friends?" "They've met at a few gatherings," Olivia replied, accepting the drink gratefully. "Nothing special." But as she watched Nathan laugh at something Vanessa said, then pull out his phone to show her something, a knot formed in Olivia's stomach. This wasn't nothing. The way he angled his body toward Vanessa, the animated gestures, it was a side of Nathan she hadn't seen in months. Rather than creating a scene, Olivia decided to observe. She excused herself from conversations to circle the room, always keeping Nathan in her peripheral vision. She noticed how he sought out Vanessa repeatedly, how their conversations seemed to exclude others, and how his hand occasionally brushed against Vanessa's in ways that seemed too deliberate to be accidental. During the cutting of the cake, Olivia caught Nathan glancing at Vanessa instead of focusing on their traditional moment. The photographer captured the perfect shot, the beaming bride and the groom looking elsewhere. It would be a painful reminder later, Olivia thought. As the night wore on, Olivia began documenting the interactions discreetly. She asked the wedding videographer to ensure certain moments were captured, and she enlisted her younger brother Trevor to take candid photos throughout the reception. Not to humiliate Nathan, but to confirm what she was seeing was real and not a product of wedding day anxiety. "To the bride and groom," called out the best man, raising a toast. "May your love be as eternal as it is today." Glasses clinked, and Olivia smiled mechanically, wondering if the love being celebrated was already fracturing before their eyes. She caught Nathan checking his watch, then glancing toward the garden terrace where Vanessa had just stepped out alone. As guests crowded around for group photos, Olivia made her decision. She would not confront, she would not accuse. She would investigate, understand, and then decide what this day, their wedding day, would truly mean for their future together. Behind the smiles, the grand ballroom of Willow Creek Estate sparkled under crystal chandeliers as Olivia navigated through clusters of well-wishers. Each congratulatory embrace felt like an act in a play she hadn't rehearsed for. Her wedding band, still unfamiliar on her finger, caught the light as she reached for another flute of champagne. Her third, though she'd barely sipped the previous two. "You're watching them," observed Trevor, Olivia's younger brother, appearing at her side with a plate of hors d'oeuvres. At 24, Trevor possessed a perceptiveness that often caught Olivia off guard. "I noticed it too. Want me to accidentally spill something on his tux?" "Don't you dare," Olivia whispered, though a part of her appreciated his protective instinct. "This is my problem to solve, not yours." Trevor shrugged, popping a stuffed mushroom into his mouth. "Your call. But I'm documenting everything like you asked. Got some interesting shots of them by the fountain garden. Nothing damning, but definitely familiar." Olivia felt her chest tighten. "Show me." Trevor discreetly pulled out his phone, swiping to a series of photos. Nathan leaning toward Vanessa, his hand resting on the small of her back. Vanessa tucking something into his jacket pocket. The two of them glancing around before slipping behind a decorative trellis. Each image drove a new splinter into Olivia's heart. "I'm following your lead here," Trevor said, pocketing his phone as their grandmother approached. "But just say the word and Operation Wedding Sabotage commences." Olivia mustered a smile for her grandmother, then whispered to Trevor, "No sabotage, just information." As the evening progressed, Olivia became a detective at her own wedding reception. She strategically positioned herself near conversations, volunteered to take photos that gave her vantage points across the room, and even enlisted the wedding coordinator, Margot, under the guise of wanting to ensure certain special moments were captured. "The groom seems to be enjoying himself," Margot commented as they watched Nathan throw his head back in laughter at something Vanessa said. They were seated at a table far from the main wedding party, heads close together. "Yes, he certainly is," Olivia replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Margot, could you ask the videographer to focus on that table for a bit? I want to capture all the joy of this evening." Margot's expression flickered with understanding before she nodded and disappeared into the crowd. Olivia retreated to the bridal suite under the pretense of fixing her makeup. Alone at last, she allowed herself 5 minutes of unguarded emotion. Tears welled, but didn't fall. She refused to ruin her carefully applied makeup for a man who couldn't even maintain his vows for a single day. Her phone buzzed with a text from Trevor. "They're heading to the East Garden. Want me to follow?" Olivia's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Following them felt invasive, even if it was her wedding day being tainted. But uncertainty was a slow poison she couldn't endure. "Yes," she typed. Discreetly. While waiting for Trevor's update, Olivia scrolled through photos from the engagement party, the bridal shower, their rehearsal dinner. In every image, Nathan looked at her with unmistakable adoration. What had changed? When had his eyes begun searching for someone else? The door to the bridal suite opened, and Olivia quickly locked her phone. It was Diane, her mother, carrying a plate of wedding cake. "You haven't eaten a thing all day," she chided gently, setting the cake down. "What's wrong, sweetheart? And don't say nothing. I've known you since before you drew breath." Olivia hesitated. Confiding in her mother would make the situation real, would transform suspicion into spoken concern. But Diane had always been her anchor. "I think Nathan is." "Interested in Vanessa?" she admitted, the words bitter on her tongue. Diane's expression softened with understanding rather than surprise. "I noticed something seemed off. That's why I came to find you." She sat beside Olivia, taking her daughter's hands. "What are you going to do?" "Right now, I'm gathering evidence," Olivia replied, surprising herself with her clinical approach. "I need to understand what's happening before I confront him." Diane nodded slowly. "You've always been methodical. But remember, this is your wedding day. Whatever's happening doesn't define your worth." Olivia's phone buzzed again. Trevor had sent a voice recording with the message. You need to hear this. Found them behind the gazebo. I need a moment, Olivia told her mother, who squeezed her hand before leaving. With trembling fingers, Olivia pressed play on the recording, hearing Nathan's voice filter through the speaker. Can't believe you kept this secret all this time, Nathan was saying, his voice thick with emotion. I had to, came Vanessa's reply. You weren't supposed to find out, especially not today. But now that I know, the recording cut off abruptly. Another message from Trevor appeared. Sorry, they started moving and I had to hide. Coming back inside now. Olivia stared at her reflection in the vanity mirror, a bride on her wedding day piecing together fragments of betrayal. The woman looking back at her wasn't broken. She was resolute. She would see this charade through to its conclusion, maintaining her dignity in front of their guests while collecting the pieces of a truth she never expected to face on what should have been the happiest day of her life. Rising from the vanity chair, Olivia reapplied her lipstick with a steady hand. The night was far from over, and so was her investigation. Revelation among roses. The midnight blue sky above Willow Creek Estate was studded with stars as Olivia stood on the balcony overlooking the illuminated rose garden. The reception was in full swing behind her, the band playing their third encore as enthusiastic dancers refused to acknowledge the lateness of the hour. Olivia had excused herself, needing space to process the fragments of information she'd gathered throughout the evening. Trevor approached, looking uncharacteristically serious in his groomsman attire. I've got more, he said, leaning against the balcony rail beside her. And it's not what we thought, Olivia braced herself. Tell me. I overheard them in the library when I went to get Grandma's shawl. Vanessa was crying, and Nathan was comforting her. Trevor's expression was puzzled. They were talking about someone named Daniel. Daniel? Olivia repeated, confusion momentarily replacing her hurt. I don't know a Daniel. Apparently he's Vanessa's ex. They broke up last month and she's been devastated. Nathan's been helping her through it? Trevor sounded as uncertain as Olivia felt. It seemed like more than just friendly comfort, though. There's something else going on. Olivia's mind raced, trying to fit this new information into the painful narrative she'd been constructing. Did you record any of it? Trevor shook his head. They spotted me before I could. But Nathan looked guilty when he saw me, like he knew how it must appear. A soft cough interrupted them. They turned to find Margot, the wedding coordinator, hesitating by the balcony entrance. I'm sorry to intrude, Mrs. Reed, but there's something you should know. She stepped forward, lowering her voice. The videographer captured a conversation between Mr. Reed and Ms. Mitchell in the library. He thought I should bring it to your attention immediately. Olivia exchanged glances with Trevor before nodding to Margot. Show me. They followed Margot to the small office off the main hall where the videographer had set up his equipment. On a laptop screen, Olivia watched as Nathan and Vanessa appeared in the ornate library, unaware of the camera positioned discreetly in the corner for capturing guest messages. Can't keep doing this. Nathan, Vanessa was saying, wiping at her eyes. It's not fair to her, especially today. I know, Nathan replied, running a hand through his hair. But I promised you I'd help. Daniel nearly destroyed you and I couldn't stand by and watch. But the money? The apartment? That goes beyond friendship and you know it. Vanessa's voice was strained. Olivia would be devastated if she knew. Olivia felt her breath catch. Money? Apartment? What exactly had Nathan been providing for Vanessa? On screen, Nathan paced the room. She can't know yet. Not until I figure out how to explain it all. Explain what? Vanessa demanded. That you've been spending your joint savings to help your ex-girlfriend escape an abusive relationship? That you've been meeting me secretly to avoid Daniel finding out? How is that going to sound to her? Olivia gripped the edge of the desk as the pieces began to shift into a new, unexpected pattern. Ex-girlfriend. That was a detail Nathan had conveniently omitted from his history with Vanessa. I should have told her from the beginning, Nathan admitted on screen, but I was afraid she wouldn't understand why I needed to help you. Olivia's so by the book and this whole situation is so messy. She deserves to know the truth, Vanessa insisted. Today, before this goes any further. The video continued, revealing more of the complex history between Nathan and Vanessa. They had dated briefly in college, remained friends afterward, and recently reconnected when Vanessa found herself trapped in an abusive relationship with Daniel. Fearing for her safety, Nathan had secretly helped finance her escape, finding her a temporary apartment and providing emotional support, all without telling Olivia. As the video ended, Olivia sat in stunned silence. The betrayal she'd sensed was real, but its nature was entirely different from what she'd imagined. Nathan hadn't been pursuing Vanessa romantically. He'd been hiding a significant secret from his new wife, making unilateral decisions with their joint finances, and maintaining an intimate emotional connection with an ex-girlfriend. "I'll give you some privacy," Margot said softly, ushering the videographer out of the room. Trevor lingered, uncertain. "Liv, are you okay?" "I need a minute," Olivia replied, her voice surprisingly steady. "Actually, no. I need you to find Nathan and tell him to meet me in the rose garden, alone." As Trevor left, Olivia gathered her thoughts. The pain of suspected infidelity had transformed into a different kind of hurt. The realization that the man she'd just married didn't trust her enough to share this significant part of his life. He'd judged her character and found it wanting, assuming she wouldn't understand or support his desire to help someone in danger. The revelation stung, but it also provided clarity. This wasn't about desire or temptation. It was about trust, communication, and respect. The very foundations of the marriage they had just committed to before God and family. Olivia rose, smoothed her wedding gown, and headed for the garden. The night air carried the sweet scent of roses as she positioned herself on a stone bench, illuminated by strings of fairy lights woven through the trellises. Here, surrounded by flowers that symbolized love in all its complexity, she would confront the man who had pledged his life to her just hours ago. A man who, despite his good intentions, had begun their marriage with a fundamental breach of trust. The gravel crunched softly as Nathan approached, his silhouette becoming clearer as he neared. His expression was a mixture of confusion and apprehension, clearly wondering what awaited him in this midnight garden of truth. Midnight confrontation. The rose garden was eerily quiet, the distant sounds of the reception creating a muffled backdrop to the confrontation Olivia had never imagined would mark her wedding night. Nathan approached cautiously, his formal black tuxedo a stark contrast against the colorful blooms surrounding them. His face, once so open to her, now seemed guarded, a stranger wearing her husband's features. "Trevor said you wanted to see me," Nathan said, stopping a few feet away from where Olivia sat. His voice carried a note of wariness. "Is everything okay?" The question, so innocuous and yet so loaded, almost made Olivia laugh. "No, Nathan, everything is not okay," she replied, her voice remarkably calm. "I know about Vanessa." Nathan's posture stiffened, his eyes widening slightly before he controlled his expression. "Olivia, let me finish," she interrupted, raising a hand. "I know she's your ex-girlfriend. I know about Daniel and the abuse. I know you've been secretly supporting her financially and emotionally. What I don't know is why you felt you needed to hide all of this from me." Nathan's face paled in the moonlight. "How did you—" "Does it matter? What matters is that you've been lying to me." Olivia stood, needing to feel on equal footing. "We just vowed to share our lives, Nathan. Hours ago, yet you've been sharing parts of yours with someone else." Nathan took a step forward, then stopped himself. "It's not what you're thinking, isn't it?" Olivia challenged. "I've spent our wedding day watching you seek her out, watching you whisper and share secrets. I thought you were attracted to her, that maybe you were having second thoughts about us. But the truth is almost worse. You trusted her more than you trusted me." The fairy lights cast shifting patterns across Nathan's face as he struggled to find words. "I was trying to protect you. From what?" Olivia demanded, feeling her composure begin to crack. "From knowing that you're compassionate enough to help someone in danger? From being part of that solution? Or from knowing that you make major financial decisions without consulting me?" Nathan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she knew well. "Daniel is dangerous, Olivia. Truly dangerous. The less people who knew about Vanessa's situation, the safer she was. I'm not people, Nathan. I'm your wife. Olivia's voice broke on the last word, the weight of the day finally pressing down on her. Did you think I wouldn't understand? That I'd be jealous or unreasonable? Is that who you think I am? No, Nathan said quickly, taking another step toward her. It was never about you not understanding. It was about keeping you safe, too. Daniel has been following Vanessa, threatening anyone who helps her. I didn't want to put that on you, especially with the wedding planning and your promotion at work. Olivia felt tears threatening but held them back. So instead, you shared this burden with her alone. You created a secret world that excluded me. Do you have any idea what that looks like? How that feels? Nathan's expression crumpled. I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was doing the right thing. By lying? By sneaking around on our wedding day? Olivia gestured toward the reception. Do you know what I've been going through in there? Watching my new husband seemingly flirt with another woman on what should be the happiest day of our lives. For the first time, real understanding dawned on Nathan's face. You thought I was interested in Vanessa? Romantically. What was I supposed to think? You've been distant for weeks. Today, you barely looked at me during our first dance, but lit up every time you spoke with her. The hurt Olivia had been suppressing all evening seeped into her voice. You chose today, our wedding day, to have multiple private conversations with an ex-girlfriend you never even told me about. Nathan closed the distance between them, reaching for her hands. Olivia allowed the contact, but remained rigid. Olivia, I swear to you, there's nothing romantic between Vanessa and me. Not anymore. We dated briefly in sophomore year, before I even knew you existed. She reached out to me 3 months ago because Daniel had isolated her from most of her friends, and she remembered I worked in property management. She needed a safe place to stay where he couldn't find her. And the money, Olivia pressed. Nathan winced. About $12,000 from our savings. She lost everything when she left him. He controlled all their accounts. She's paying me back monthly from her new job. Olivia processed this information, trying to separate her emotional response from the objective facts. Why today, Nathan? Of all days, why were you so wrapped up with her at our wedding? Because she's leaving tomorrow, Nathan admitted, his grip on her hands tightening. Moving across the country where Daniel can't find her. She wanted to say goodbye and to give me this. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sealed envelope. It's a cashier's check for the full amount I lent her. Her aunt helped her out. She wanted me to have it today so we could start our marriage without that financial burden. Olivia stared at the envelope, feeling the ground shift beneath her once again. So, all those secretive conversations were about finalizing her departure plans and making sure she'd be safe, Nathan finished. I didn't want to burden you with this dark stuff on our wedding day. I planned to tell you everything during our honeymoon. The revelation hung between them in the night air, reshaping Olivia's understanding of the day's events. Nathan's intentions had been noble, if severely misguided. He hadn't been pursuing another woman. He'd been trying to protect both women in his life, failing to see how his secrecy was causing more damage than the truth would have. You should have told me from the beginning, Olivia said finally. I would have helped. I would have understood. I know that now, Nathan replied, genuine regret in his eyes. I made a terrible mistake, thinking I could handle everything myself. I was wrong, and I nearly ruined the most important day of our lives. Olivia felt the tight knot of anxiety that had been growing all day begin to loosen, replaced by a different kind of pain, the ache of realizing that their marriage was beginning with a fundamental lesson about trust that most couples learned. Years into their relationship, where do we go from here? Nathan asked quietly, still holding her hands. Olivia looked up at him, seeing both the man she loved and the flaws she would need to accept. We start again, she said. With honesty this time. Complete honesty. New vows' morning light filtered through the gauzy curtains of the honeymoon suite at Willow Creek Estate, where Olivia and Nathan had decided to spend their wedding night despite the emotional turbulence that had marked the occasion. Olivia stirred. First, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings, before the events of the previous day came rushing back, The ceremony, the reception, the investigation, the confrontation among roses, and finally the long, raw conversation that had extended well into the early hours. She turned to find Nathan already awake, watching her with an expression of cautious hope. "Good morning, Mrs. Reed," he said softly, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from her face. The gesture was tentative, as if he feared she might pull away. "Good morning," she replied, allowing his touch, but still feeling the lingering echo of yesterday's hurt. "How long have you been awake?" "A while," Nathan admitted. "Been thinking about everything. About us." Olivia sat up against the headboard, drawing the silk comforter around her shoulders like armor. "And what conclusions have you reached?" Nathan followed suit, positioning himself to face her directly. "That I almost lost you before our marriage really began. That my intentions, however good I thought they were, caused you pain I never wanted you to feel." He reached for her hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she allowed him to take it. "And that I never want to see that look on your face again, the one you had in the garden when you thought I'd betrayed us." Olivia studied their intertwined fingers, her wedding band still new and unfamiliar next to his. "I keep thinking about what would have happened if I hadn't discovered the truth," she said. "If I'd just ignored what I was seeing, or if I'd confronted you in anger without understanding the full picture. We'd have started our marriage with even more misunderstanding," Nathan acknowledged. "Either with you silently resenting me, or with an explosive argument that might have been difficult to recover from." Olivia nodded slowly. "Instead, we're starting with our eyes wide open. No illusions about perfection." A tentative knock at the door interrupted them. Nathan slipped on a robe and answered to find a hotel staff member with a breakfast cart and an envelope. "Compliments of the wedding party, sir," the young man said, before discreetly withdrawing. Nathan wheeled the cart beside the bed, picking up the envelope. Inside was a note from Trevor. "Figured you two could use breakfast in private. Take all the time you need. P.S. The video footage has been deleted. Some things should stay between you." Olivia felt a rush of gratitude for her brother's understanding. "He's growing up," she murmured, accepting the cup of coffee Nathan offered. They ate in companionable silence for a while, the tension between them not gone but transformed into something more thoughtful, less acute. "I called Vanessa this morning," Nathan said finally. "Before you woke up." Olivia's hand paused midway to her mouth, a piece of toast suspended. "Oh?" "I told her everything, about how my secrecy hurt you, about our conversation in the garden. I wanted her to know that she doesn't need to feel guilty for any of it. The mistake was mine." "How did she take it?" "She was mortified that she'd been part of causing you pain on your wedding day," Nathan said. "She asked if she could call you to apologize and explain her side. I told her that would be your decision." Olivia considered this, taking a sip of her coffee. "I think I'd like that, actually. Not today, but soon." She set down her cup with a decisive motion. "I want to understand the whole story, not just the fragments I pieced together." Nathan nodded, relief evident in his expression. "There's something else. I've been thinking about what you said, about me not trusting you to handle difficult situations." He reached for the leather portfolio he'd placed on the nightstand. "I made something for you." Inside the portfolio was a handwritten letter, several pages long. At the top, in Nathan's neat architect's printing, were the words, "New vows." "These aren't to replace our official vows," Nathan explained as Olivia began reading. "They're additions, promises I should have made explicitly yesterday." Olivia scanned the pages, her vision blurring slightly as she read, "I vow to trust you with my whole truth, not just the parts I think you want to hear. I vow to respect your strength by sharing burdens rather than shielding you from them. I vow to remember that protection without honesty is not really protection at all. I vow to see you as a partner in all things, not just the easy ones. I vow to recognize that love thrives in honesty, even when that honesty is difficult. The list continued, each vow addressing the core issues that had surfaced during their wedding day crisis. By the final page, Olivia found herself crying silently, tears dropping onto the paper. "These are beautiful," she whispered, looking up at him. "And necessary." "I spent all night writing them," Nathan said. "They're promises I intend to keep starting today." Olivia wiped her eyes, then reached for her purse beside the bed. She extracted a small notebook and pen, then turned to a fresh page. "My turn," she said, beginning to write. For the next hour, they sat side by side, crafting additional vows to each other, promises born from the unexpected trial of their first day as husband and wife. When they finished, Nathan called for the hotel chaplain, who had been on standby for any wedding emergencies, asking if he would witness a private renewal of vows. In the intimate setting of their suite, still in their night clothes, Olivia and Nathan stood before the surprised but understanding chaplain and read their new promises to each other. There were no guests this time, no elaborate decorations or music, just two people recommitting to a deeper, more honest version of the partnership they had formally begun the day before. Later, as they walked the grounds of the estate before departing for their honeymoon destination, Olivia felt a strange sense of gratitude for the turbulence they had weathered. "Do you think it's odd that I'm almost glad this happened?" she asked Nathan as they paused by the rose garden where they'd had their midnight confrontation. Not the hurt part, but the revealing part. Nathan considered this, his arms secure around her waist. "I think it forced us to have conversations most couples avoid until they're years into marriage. We compressed a lot of growth into 24 hours. Olivia leaned into him, feeling the solid presence of the man who had shown himself capable of both profound mistakes and profound remorse. "Our wedding story will certainly be unique," she mused. "Not the fairy tale I imagined, but maybe something better, something real." "I prefer real," Nathan said, turning to face her. "Fairy tales end with happily ever after. They don't tell you how that happiness is maintained, how it's fought for when challenged." As they prepared to leave Willow Creek Estate, Olivia took one final look at the place where their marriage had begun with unexpected complication. What might have been a disaster had instead become a foundation, imperfect but honest, cracked but stronger for having been tested and mended. The photographer they'd hired for candid departure shots captured the moment Olivia and Nathan stepped into the vintage Rolls-Royce that would take them to the airport. Unlike the posed perfection of their wedding portraits, these images captured something more valuable: the quiet determination of two people who had glimpsed the fragility of their bond and chosen to reinforce it rather than abandon it. As the car pulled away, Olivia rested her head on Nathan's shoulder, feeling both older and newer than she had been just a day ago. Their marriage had been tested before it truly began, but perhaps that was a gift in disguise, a chance to build on rock rather than sand, on reality rather than illusion. "To us," Nathan said softly, raising an imaginary toast. "Not perfect, but perfectly honest from this day forward." Olivia smiled, completing the toast. "To the marriage we're actually having, not the one we pretended to have." And in that moment, as Willow Creek Estate disappeared behind them, Olivia realized that the most beautiful thing about their wedding day hadn't been the perfect ceremony or the elaborate reception. It had been the midnight hour in the garden when pretense had fallen away and two flawed, loving humans had chosen to see each other clearly and stay.